Bill, it's an honor and privilege to speak with you. Welcome to Popternative.
Well, Popternative, I am so happy to be here.
Mindsets really interest me when it comes to kind of, returning to projects or specifically, with, Cold Case Files, DNA Speaks. What was that mindset returning specifically for this series?
Well, I've produced 500 documentaries for Kurtis Productions, and it runs the gamut for on A&E investigative reports and Cold Case Files and American Justice, and I could go on and on.
Yeah.
But American Justice, we did 127 of these shows, and when we started and when we stopped, DNA had not yet been accepted by everyone.
Yes.
Primarily because they had to have a PCR machine to amplify the samples, and it's come a long way. So in many ways, it's totally different. It's like doing new shows.
Yep.
And I'm very happy to do it because I've learned a lot in the days. And there are two themes that I find that are running through the individual episodes. One, we're looking deeply at the victim, usually a parent or the grandma, who are the ones who largely solve these because they're always in contact with the cops. And then the dogged determination of the detectives and law enforcement, they never forget it. And so they're more than happy they may not be assigned to that for 20 years, but more than happy to pick it up and just personally look for the suspect and run the CODIS machine with the DNA. So it's a brand new game for me.
Absolutely. And all 10 episodes, August 17th on Hulu. I find it interesting because I want to know, for someone who, arguably is one of the most kind of influential, trailblazing, pundits, hosts for true crime. The true crime podcast boom really resurged a lot of the appetite and interest for a lot of that. So I want to know, because it's so out there right now and people are even going back to watch Cold Case Files, is there anything about true crime misconception-wise, Bill, that you can share with me where maybe people don't realize anything specifically about it? Is there a misconception of true crime that comes to mind specifically?
That's a good point, because there are surprises.
Yep.
It's a good story to be told, a beginning, a middle, and an end. You have a Sherlock Holmes kind of technical special weapon. It's DNA. How are we going, and forensics, how are we going to solve this? And you have the very human quality that, oh my God, this could happen to me. And in fact, I think it's quite a lesson for people. The woman who sends her child off to school, that's our first episode. In the back of her mind, she knows, oh my God, what if something happens that I never see her again? Mm-hmm. And there's that latent fear, but she does it anyway because she has to. And so you have the tension and the fear and the surprise and the good story.
Absolutely.
And success.
You can't speak for the audience, but from your perspective with kind of working on a lot of these shows, do you think, is one thing with DNA Speaks is obviously the twists and turns of everything. Do you think that's something that really hits stride with the audience with true crime, is the twists and turns? Is that kind of the main thing, catalyst, do you think, for true crime specifically, Bill?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the red herrings, the dead ends, where in fact, in our first episode, there are two what they think are matches, but they're not matches. They look like the sketch of the potential suspect. They're convinced that's it, but they don't match. And what do? You keep going.
Yeah.
And so the audience also wants to see a case solved.
Yes.
They want to have that satisfaction that justice is done. Mm-hmm. I think you're right.
Do you find it interesting that the audience, because there's, the passive stuff where you can come home from a late night at work and, grab a pizza and watch a true crime documentary or watch Cold Case Files, but then, you need to be, I feel like you need to be an active kind of detective, like an active audience member watching these shows, because you're going to miss something. Do you find that interesting as well, the active and passive audience members of Cold Case Files? Because I always thought that it was interesting as well, Bill.
Yes, and what it comes from is this intense interest in these stories and in the true crime.
Yeah.
And the true crime is different than, an FBI story or NCIS working. They're also interesting, but it's not like true crime where it's real. And where it's real, then there's an extra attraction. But they're absolutely, you're right. You're right.
It's interesting to think about. No, it's interesting to think about. And like when I do these interviews, Bill, I always like the mindsets and the kind of behind the scenes and creating it or something interesting. I mean, there's a lot of people that will ask you specifically about cases and everything, but I just find it interesting to see kind of where how we came to be this kind of culture that really we're really interested in this. And I always want to know why. And, you're answering the questions perfectly.
Well, and I think it's always been there. Jack the Ripper.
Yep.
Look at it. It's what's wrong with us. What can happen to us? Monsters in the forests where we can't go.
Yep.
Our own fears, are reflected in these stories. I had a guy just 2 days ago say, "My wife hates you, just hates you." I said, "Why?" Because I love Cold Case Files and I watch it all the time. And she said, "Don't you watch anything else?" So.
But it's very interesting because I'm a big horror movie fan. I love horror movies, always been a big fan. And I find it interesting because, the horror movies that are coming out these days are elevating the genre because they're not just sticking to the traditional tropes of gore and jump scares and everything. They are kind of working on this people are scary head game mentality. You know what I mean? Where people are scary. And you've been working in that kind of realm for a while with true crime, if you think about it.
Well, absolutely. And it becomes more scary.
Yeah.
You always know that the Transformers or King Kong isn't real.
Yes.
But the guy who shoots, a young 14-year-old trying to go to school, that could happen. That may have happened yesterday here in Chicago. I mean, crime is so terrible. It really,
absolutely. And technology is always changing. 1999 Cold Case Files, you all really saw that was kind of, the internet was starting and everything. I don't think you've ever maybe predicted the true crime podcast boom. But did you ever have conversations years back about technology is changing all the time. There's going to be a new way for this stuff to get out. Did you ever think about that at all? I'm just curious about that.
Well, they will call me the kids who were doing the podcasts. I'm the old man of the Cold Case, and ask these same questions. I could see it. I was there when, the PCR machine was out and DNA was developed in the 80s. And a lot of the exoneration cases are from a lack of using DNA. They even had it, but they weren't going to do it. They were going to get their own evidence. So, but I could see, hey, this is, the absolute answer. It turned out to be yes and no, because I found and did some stories on labs that were jimmying, the findings. So you can actually, make anything into an illegal piece of evidence. But now, O.J. Simpson and the Innocence Project, that proved, I think, a lot of cases can be solved, and it is absolute.
No, absolutely. And all 10 episodes of Cold Case Files, DNA Speaks, are premiering on Hulu August 17th. Bill, honor and privilege to speak with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.